The prosecution scored a victory Monday in its case against Democratic Senator Robert Menendez of New Jersey. Judge William Walz declined to throw out any of the charges Menendez faces. He is accused of accepting lavish bribes from wealthy Florida eye doctor Solomon Melgen. Melgen allegedly provided Menendez with gifts such as private jet flights and stays at luxury hotels in exchange for pressuring government officials on Melgen's behalf. Rikki Klieman is a CBS News legal analyst, and she joins me now with more. All right, Rikki, so what are the implications now of the judge's decision moving forward?
Well, beyond the fact that I think it was a surprise to many of us who have been following this case, because the judge was so troubled with the theory that the government presented. The ultimate implications are process. And what do I mean by process? The defense has started its case. The defense began with a family witness, probably a smart way to humanize the defendant. And the case will eventually go through all of the evidence on the defense side. Keep in mind the defense has no burden of proof, proof solely on the government beyond a reasonable doubt. Ultimately, you'd have closing arguments and the case will go to a jury. Now, the judge still has an option here. Just because the judge did not at this moment in time throw out the case or grant what is called a motion for a directed verdict, or in other circles a motion for judgment of acquittal, that judge can, at the end of the case, should the jury decide to find Senator Menendez guilty, the judge can still go back and find that Senator Menendez would be found not guilty, notwithstanding the verdict. So in many ways, the judge has punted. What he may be hoping for is that the jury does his work for him, and the jury decides that Mr. Menendez, Senator Menendez, is not guilty.
Interesting. All right. Well, Judge William Walz rejected Menendez's lawyer's request to throw out any of the charges the senator is facing, as we noted. But what was the judge's reasoning here? It's a pretty complicated kind of thing when you talk about the legal aspects of it, but there was another case that the lawyers were pointing to help with the Menendez defense.
Many people have heard about the McDonald case, and the McDonald case concerns a governor. And the reason they've heard about it is because in their own jurisdiction, they have seen the lives of very corrupt politicians be convicted at trial, and then, lo and behold, the case is reversed. Why? Because of the McDonald ruling. And what the McDonald ruling, in an 8-0 decision of the United States Supreme Court, was it talked about what is really a corrupt act. Simply arranging a meeting, simply putting people together is not a quote-unquote corrupt act enough for bribery. So what was being argued in this case, in Senator Menendez's case, was to say, okay, you may have the quid, where's the pro quo?
Right.
Where does it meet? That is, you can't just say, if I got a plane trip, I did X for that plane trip. If I got a fancy hotel suite, I did Y. So what the government attempted to argue, and what ultimately the judge must have bought in order for the case to go forward, is what we now call a stream of benefits. That is, you can't quite pin the tail on this quid for this quo. But it's a long-time relationship that for all of these favors that Senator Menendez allegedly, and I say allegedly because it's not proven guilty yet before a jury beyond a reasonable doubt, that he did favors for Solomon Melgen. Well, maybe yes, maybe no. This is a long-term, long-time friendship. So stream of benefits versus quid pro quo, that's going to become the ultimate legal issue.
So following up on this friendship notion, Menendez's defense team is now going to be presenting its case. So what can we expect to hear from defense attorneys?
I would assume that we're going to find out they've been friends forever. The closer they are, the more they did together, the more involved they are, the harder it is to pick apart whether or not there were corrupt acts in exchange for the lavish gifts.
All right. We'll be watching it all closely. Rikki Klieman, thank you so much, Rikki.
Thanks, Elaine.